Welcome, everybody. Welcome, Goldie, again. A few words about PC3. PC3 is an initiative which is actually started by three of us, Roshni, Tinku, and myself, Vidya. This is specifically for ICF coaches who want to specialize in coaching parents and teenagers. Initially, we started with an open WhatsApp group. Then we gradually, all of you know, that we shifted to a very focused PC3 community through a registration form. And thank you so much, everyone, for having so much of patience and taking out time to fill out the registration form. Much appreciated. Feel free to actually share the form with anybody who are ICF coaches and who would like to specifically focus on parents and teenagers. Now, Parental Coaches Collective also has multiple groups. It's got a discussion forum, a book club, and also masterclass and workshops. In fact, we will be meeting on the 21st November at 7:30 to 8:30 to discuss about the part one and part two of the book, The Awakened Family. So looking forward to meeting you all there. Yes. Um, Roshni, do you want to take a small pic if you can have, if others can have the video on, and later on we can take another pic? Can I just request everybody else to be on camera?
John Lux. Yeah. Okay, you can smile.
Thank you so much, Roshni.
Thank
Okay.
you.
So coming back to today's masterclass, I would like to introduce you to our um, a good friend speaker, Goldie. Um, she's a life and youth coach. She's also an author of two books, that's Thoughts Translated and Metamorphosis. She's born and raised in Madrid with Indian roots. She started coaching in the year 2015, and she has around 1,300 years of experience working with um, different individuals from different backgrounds, from baby boomers to Gen Z. In fact, this inspired her to co found Mind the Gen Gap podcast, where she explores generational dynamics and challenges. As a youth and family coach, she is very passionate about supporting parents, teenagers to navigate through the unique challenges of adolescence. Her son and daughter are her constant inspiration for the work, for all her work as a coach. And in addition to all this, during her free time, she loves to write poetries, and she's a fitness freak, and she also loves running. So it's really inspiring, Goldie, when I see your posts about running and fitness. Today, she's going to share a very important part of her experience and wisdom with us through this masterclass, which is called as Mastering Distillery Calls with Parents and Teens. But before I pass it on to Goldie, I would like to mention that we would like to really hear your thoughts, views, and questions about the session. But just mute yourself and write the questions in the chat box, and we will take up the questions after the session is over. So over to Goldie.
Thank you so much, Vidya, and very warm welcome to all of you here. Thank you for joining. I don't have 1,300 years of experience, as Vidya said.
Yeah, I said yes. I'm sorry for that.
It's 1,300 hours.
300 years of experience. Yeah. How I
But
wish. Yeah.
on
Yeah.
on that note of humor, I will continue. Before I share my screen, which I will in a short while, I just wanted to find out from all of you here Is everyone doing youth coaching or both youth and parents? You can put it in the chat just so I get a little bit of an idea. You know, who am I addressing today? When I'm able to see the chat, because I somehow don't have a good view of it. I don't know why. Yes, here. Both. Okay, yeah. I ask because okay. The reason I'm asking is because I normally do both as well. But for me, today's masterclass is about the discovery call focused around the youth, which is our main client. Okay, so just to be clear, there's a slight modification in the way you have a discovery call with a youth versus if it's a parent, it's obviously an adult. Okay, so on that note, I will now share my screen. Okay. If you can all see it, just do a thumbs up. I'm hoping you all can. Yeah. Okay. So a discovery call for coaching young people and families. I always like to refresh everyone's memories on what is the premise of what are we doing, which is, you know, we're coaching. And if you're an ICF coach, this definition must be very familiar to you. As much as I've been coaching for so many hours, I still feel that I need to have this on my computer as a post-it. And I'm not joking. I literally have stuck on my screen as I can show you the definition, because I feel it can make or break any session. And of course, the discovery call is the most important beginning of your relationship with your client. And why is it important? Because I just want to, I want you to pay attention to the words that I have highlighted. The first one is partnership. So what does this mean? This means it's an equal balance between the coach, which is you, the professional, and the client. In this case, our client is the youth. Okay, so very big distinction. The client is the youth, not the parent. And what are we doing? We are inspiring. We are not teaching. We are not tutoring. We are not doing therapy. We are inspiring in the first instance in this relationship, the client, to maximize their potential. Now, this potential can come whether it's in an academic, space, in a personal space, or of course for professionals, we also use the word professional. In this particular context, as you know, it's to maximize the potential of the client, which is the youth. Okay. How do we do this? By listening. You don't tell, you listen. Yes, you listen and then you ask questions. I know this probably sounds like I already know this, but believe me, sometimes we forget when we have a young person sitting in front of us, because we have this temptation to see them as somebody who's below us, but actually they're not there. Remember, they're our partner. So they're actually the same and on equal level to us. So once you read this definition, below in blue, what I've highlighted is what you must endeavor to transmit to your client and your sponsor. I'll come back to who your sponsor is. So just as bullet points I've written, we will be present and future focused. We are not going into the past. This is essentially what coaching is, right? We are working from the now to the later. We will focus on goals and solutions. So we won't be spending too much time on wondering, why did that happen? How did that happen? It's about, okay, how can we make that something different? It's always about change. It's always about doing things what you're already doing in a better way, correct? Number 3, this was already mentioned earlier. The coach, so your role is a partner, not a tutor, not a therapist, nor a mentor. There's a big difference between mentor and coach. We all know this. And you're definitely not a teacher, okay? Number 4, we will work together. The word together has to be emphasized time and time again. Why? Because as you know, it's about taking ownership of what happens in the session. We don't lead the session, the client leads the session. So there's a dance metaphorically happening where the steps are set by the client and you are simply leading them with the steps that they are setting, which is why you are therefore working together in partnership to help facilitate, what is it? Growth. growth, and that could be anything that goes above the iceberg, the famous ICF iceberg that I'm sure many of you are familiar with. Okay, so what is my behavior? How do I want to modify it? What is the action I'm taking? From where does the inspiration come for me to take a different action? These are just things that we as coaches are always very cognizant of. Okay, and the client, sometimes we forget. Sometimes we think the client is actually the parent, because our conversation in the beginning tends to start with the client, with the parent, sorry. But actually the client, the main agent here, is always the young person. Okay? Moving on. Okay, so I earlier said that there's a sponsor. What's the sponsor? Youth coaching has something very unique, which the ordinary process of coaching doesn't normally have. You have 3 people involved. Why is that? Because when the client comes to you, a teenager doesn't walk into your office on their own. They very seldomly contact you by themselves, because firstly, that would be against the law. They need permission from an adult to come and approach a coach. They may send you a DM on Instagram, which often happens to me now, but I always have to tell them to get the parent to contact me, and so the process begins. So remember that it's a 3-party process. Often in coaching, this is called a 3-party session, a tripartite also. And this is where I want to focus on, because that's where you kind of make or break a discovery call. Okay, you have the client, which is the youth, you have the sponsor, which is the parent, and then you have the coach. There are 3 parties involved. Now, as a coach who is doing a discovery call for youth and parents, in this case, the client being the youth, your most important focus in the entire coaching process will start in the engagement, where you create engagement. If you don't create a good engagement, everything else that's around this little flower that I've created can get messed up. Your action plan and follow-up will be seamless if you have made sure that your engagement is also tight. Your exploration on the process will be fantastic if you have made sure that you have made absolutely clear what is coaching about, which is always done in creating the engagement. The goals that you establish with your client will also be airtight if you have made sure that in the engagement you have made very clear that this is something that you're both going to be working on together, and you are not the only person taking responsibility for the progress of your client. Okay, so why is this important? Because ICF demonstrates this from the get-go in their competencies. If you're all ICF coaches, you know what I'm talking about. There's the core competencies. And in this particular part of the discovery call, where you create the engagement, there's 2 competencies that are very heavily focused on. CC1, which is ethical practice. So understanding and consistently applying coaching ethics and standards of coaching. What is ethical practice? Well, ethical practice begins from the minute you get an inquiry. Let's say I decide to take on that client who has DM'd me, and I know that that child is 15 years old. The ethical practice here would be to inform this child, to let their parents know that they can contact me. I facilitate my email, not my telephone number, because again, that would be giving somebody, a minor, your number. An email is a lot less invasive, even for you as a coach. So I often give them my email address, and then the parent does sometimes contact me, sometimes they don't. More often they don't, because honestly, a lot of the times these teenagers are also a little bit fickle initially in wanting to understand what is coaching. Okay, I could very easily have a discovery call with the client, in this case, the teenager, but that would be unethical as per ICF, right? That's just one little bit. I'm sure you can all come up with ways where you can differentiate between ethical and non-ethical. CC3, establishes and maintains. Sorry, did somebody say something?
Yeah, I have a question. Can I ask now or should I reserve it for later?
Can we have it for later, Lax? Is that okay?
Sure.
Or you could put it in the chat box, and then we can definitely come back to it. Yeah. CC3 is establishing and maintaining the agreement. Now, this is where I'm talking about where the work happens. You have to partner with the client and the relevant stakeholders. In this case, who's the relevant stakeholder? The sponsor, in this case, the parent mostly, or the caretaker, or sometimes you even may have a teacher from school saying, I would like this student of mine to get coached. That would also be somebody sponsoring their student to get coached with me, which would be the coach. Okay. How is this relevant? Well, you have to make sure that you're very clear in the agreement process as to who's the client, who's the sponsor, what will I be doing with the client, what will I be doing with the sponsor, what I will not be doing with the sponsor, which is giving you a feedback after every session. That's not what we do in coaching. What we do that in is in the three-party agreement, which is what is the first part of this process. And then halfway through, you can have another three-party, or you have it directly at the end of the process. So you have to schedule these three-party sessions with the sponsor. Okay, I'm going to get to that next. Okay. So there are two approaches you can take. This is not a hard and fast rule, but from my experience of over 5-7 years only with youth, what I have found is that there are two approaches that usually work. Type 1, you get that call from the sponsor, normally the parent or caretaker. That would be an intro call. An intro call should not last for more than 10 minutes because it's just a parent finding a reason to get their child coached, and they are inquiring about, I hear you're a coach, can I bring my child to you? These are my needs, etc., etc. So you have that intro call. However, in that intro call, it's very important as a coach that you explain what coaching is to the parent. Because if they don't understand from the get-go what is coaching, they will remain in doubt maybe, or you will both remain in doubt as to what you think and what do they think. Not every common person knows what coaching is, and if a parent is bringing their child to an elder, like a professional, they may more likely think that you're going to be telling the child to do something that they want you to tell them because they are not unable to do it at home. But we all know that's not how coaching works. So therefore it's important, and I'm going to go back to this slide here, that you actually explain this particular slide to them in the intro call, because that will set your ground on a very transparent note. You're both on the same page. Okay, you see how the intro call is so important as well. So coming back to the intro call, the type 1 would be, you have this call, you ask about the age of the child, obviously. A lot of parents come getting coaching for their 19 or even 20-year-olds, calling them my child. You might picture this child being 15, 14, 12. You don't know. It's important to ask, okay, what age is your child? If it's 19, 20, they are technically already an adult. It doesn't matter. They're still being sponsored by their parent, which means they are going to be taking care of the financial responsibility of payment. Therefore, they are still responsible to be told what coaching is, how it will operate. But just like any other coaching session, you have to tell this parent, whatever is discussed in the coaching session remains confidential with my client. My client is your child, whether it's a 19-year-old or a 15-year-old. Okay, so those are like the first things you mention in the intro call. After that, normally this is followed by a discovery call, which is the one that you all are familiar with. Okay, now and this is again from my own experience, if the child is a preteen, so just before 13, 14, I usually find that the discovery call can normally happen with the parents and the child in the same space. Why do I say this? Because at 12 or 11, you are still looking up to your parents and you're still fairly influenced by the parent in terms of wanting to bring change, wanting to make that, take that activity, because you look up to your parents and you kind of you cheer them, they're your role models. But because you're all experienced with teenagers, once you hit 14, 15, I don't want to know what you want to tell me, right? However, the parent still decides, I would like my child to get coached. No problem. So then type 2 comes in. Same thing, intro call always happens with the sponsor. Again, I'm not saying this is like something that cannot be changed. Recently, I had somebody who went directly to discovery call because there was a person before me who had recommended me to them. So they knew what they were falling themselves and going into. So they knew what coaching was. All they wanted was me to start. And that start was a discovery call, but with who? With the client. Okay. If you have a discovery call with the sponsor, you are eliminating the client altogether, which is not the purpose here. If you're having a discovery call with both, brilliant, that's type 1. And what happens here is normally it gets split. So both parties come into the call. Suppose it's a Zoom call, 30 minutes long normally. You can spend 10 minutes with the parent over there because the parent already knows what coaching is. You can spend those 10 minutes discussing the goals that they might want for their child. The child will be in front. They will mostly agree. 9 out of 10 times or 8 out of 10 times, that pre-teenager will be on board with the goals that the parents would like the child to work on. That's easy for the coach then. Then the responsibility of the coach is what? To be very clear about what coaching is and what coaching isn't. And also to let the child know that the next 20 minutes, which is the remaining of the discovery call, will be spent between me, your coach, and you, my client, and we're going to get to know each other. That's it. Don't burden the child with things like, confidentiality, and I'm going to give you homework maybe, or you're going to have to tell me how you're feeling. No, it's just let's get to know each other. This is also coming into the next part of the competencies, which I'll touch on. Do you all sort of get a visual picture of what's happening in type 1? Yeah. So type 2, what happens here? The first part of type 2 is the same as the first part of type 1, except the second one, you will probably have the discovery call directly with your client. So this 15 or 16-year-old or a little bit older. Why? Because they feel that they are old enough now to have like a session without their parents. And the parent normally comes with the premise of, I don't know if my child wants me on the call. They might not share with you what they want to share with you. Completely understandable. So you as a coach have to again remind the parent, yeah, sure, I'll have the discovery call with the client, my client. Don't even call them their child. Say, I will be having the call with my client, who is your child. And whatever is discussed in this discovery call, you can ask them to share if they want. And the agreement will be signed by both of you once we are through with the discovery call. Okay? I want to share the agreement as well, which this is my agreement that I use. Maybe it's a good time to share the agreement. I'm going to stop sharing this. And I want to share with you the agreement. Okay. Okay. Are you all able to see this? Yes? Right. Sorry, it took a bit long. I mean, this is my agreement. I know you all probably have your own, but the only reason I want to share this with you is because I use this document and go through it point by point with my client and the sponsor if you're doing type 1. It's a wonderful opportunity to do it because basically what you're telling both parties is to understand where we are all at. Okay, so there are no misunderstandings. Basically, I take personal responsibility for results of my coaching experience. This is the client, which is the child. It's also a really great moment for them to feel empowered. Like, okay, whatever I'm going to do with my coach is my responsibility. I'm being given that responsibility, and that makes me feel, empowered. I realize that my commitment is essential to my success. Here, what you're saying is that this is a balanced approach where we're in partnership, like the approach I told you earlier, to make very clear what is coaching. The nitty-gritties, like cancellation, policies. If I don't show up minimum 24 hours before to change or cancel, I will be charged. It's so important to have that, especially in online coaching, because a lot of people commit and then they cancel last minute, or they show up late. The kids tend to do that, So this is really important for you as a coach to protect yourself. I will video call or visit my coach on time. So these are little things. I'm not going to go through all of them, but it's really nice to have this in the session. And then you can send this to them as an email, the PDF, and ask them to date and sign it. Both have to sign it because there's a sponsor and there's a client. Okay, irrespective of the age of the client. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing this. And if anybody wants to see this, separately, just send me a message and I can do that. So I'm going to go back to the presentation. No, this is not it. Sorry. No, this is not it. I don't know what's going on. Trying to share my presentation again. Oh dear. Don't know what's going on. Sorry. Okay, we're going to try now. Yep, we're back. Okay. So we've covered the types of approaches for the discovery call. Now let's get into the discovery call. What are the objectives? The objective is, with the sponsor and the client, to understand effectively the guidelines, so logistics, the fees, the scheduling, the fact that we are having a three-party session because you're all a part of this process. We all know that any process of coaching held with a young person is never a vacuum of just, coach and client. There has got to be some form of systemic intervention or, influence from the home, from the caretaker or the parent, or even sometimes siblings come into the session. If they're, older siblings who are like also adults, I invite them in for the three-party session, because it's kind of like the goal is a family goal sometimes. And if it's not a family goal, then you will know that from the get-go with your client, and you will know that this kid wants to focus on something else. Okay, but initially you have to make sure that all parties are very equally involved in what's going to happen. And it also gives them the opportunity to understand what is their responsibility, what is your responsibility, and what is the client's responsibility. Obviously, establishing agreement, we briefly touched upon that, and you saw the agreement that I showed you. And of course, the most important thing is, are we a good fit? The reason I'm saying this is because every discovery call does not translate to a client that's going to pay you. It only means that you have to wonder whether the chemistry between client and yourself is workable. You might discover in the discovery call that this person doesn't need coaching, that they need something else. You might discover that actually the kid doesn't need coaching, the parent needs coaching. This has also been a very common thing that I'm sure many of you are familiar with. As a coach, again, that comes under CC1 ethics. It is your responsibility to communicate that to the sponsor for whatever reason you feel that this is not going to work. A very common example I find where it's not going to work is when the client is just not interested. We all know that coaching can only be done to a coachable client. If the client is not coachable, you cannot coach. No matter how much of a magic wand you have in you have to remember that that's not your responsibility. And that also comes under the one of the core competencies, where you have to realize that the coaching mindset means that you have to facilitate a space for them to feel, comfortable and trust you. But if they just don't want to be there, you can't force anybody. Okay. So a good fit normally occurs in such scenarios. So again, I'm going back to the competencies: ethical practice, as I mentioned, and establishes and maintains agreement. These are the two competencies that come very heavily in the discovery call objectives. Okay. Moving forward. Now, I'm sorry for the dense text, but I didn't feel that there was any other way to do this. I will be able to share with you the PDF slides if you want. I don't have a problem in doing that. I'm just trying to figure out a way to, because I need to read it myself. When you coach a young person, there are certain foundations that I was taught when I did my certification. It's very similar to regular coaching. Obviously, the main guidelines are the same because actually they're based on the core competencies. But with a youth, there are certain nuances which I just want to get into, which are a little bit more heavily weighted on you as a coach than maybe a regular coaching session with an adult. The first one is to make sure that you're providing a safe and trusting environment. For who? For the client, always. It has to be a space for a young person to freely express without any fear. What does this mean? Fear can be coming up in many ways from the minute you show up as a coach. And one way that we often do it without realizing is we think we're up here and they are down here. This doesn't work. If you're going in like this, looking down, then you're automatically not creating a trusting space and environment. Your body language plays a huge role with your youth client. The words that you use, you have to be in tune with their vocabulary. You can't be speaking, words in English that is non-resonating with them. You're a coach, but remember, the first thing a coach does is adapt, mirror the client. This is something you do even with an adult client. With a youth, it's even more important. And that comes under CC4, where you're cultivating trust and safety. Okay, you partner with the client in this case to create a supportive, safe environment that allows them to share freely. A wonderful way to do this is to tell them something about yourself. I'm sure that when you have your first session with a new client, you introduce yourself, don't you? So my name is Goldie. I'm, born and raised in Spain. I've been in the coaching space for blah, blah, blah number of years. And in my free time, I like to run and I'm a big foodie. Do the same with the youth, but do it in their language. Why did I become a coach? Oh, I became a coach because when I was growing up like you, I felt there was not enough people that could listen to me, and which is a fact. That is my story. So I use that. It literally takes a minute to tell them a little bit about yourself, because what you're doing is, even if they think that you're up here and they're down here, you enable that 1 minute for you to come right down here to them. And that makes them feel like, oh, I can speak to her. So why don't you tell me something about yourself? Great. They may say, I don't know what to tell you. So give them some prompters. You can give them really good questions. Like, for example, tell me a memory that makes you really happy. That's a great icebreaker, because I also believe that coaching is done from a positive space. So I do a lot of appreciative inquiry coaching, which is basically asking them questions from the positive angle of their life, focusing on strengths. I mean, we all coach in different ways. That's got nothing to do with the discovery call, but it does have a lot to do with how you're going to build a safe and trusting environment, what tools you're going to use in the very first session, which is the discovery call, to see that this client wants to coach with you. Because at the end of the day, They're going to be the decision makers of whether they want this person as their coach or they don't. Yeah. Number 2, rapport and connection. A strong foundation needs to be set to support future learning and growth. This is CC2 and CC5. What is CC2? Embodying the coaching mindset. So you have to be curious, open-minded, and flexible and centered around the client. What does this mean in youth coaching? This basically means that if they're feeling a little bit not motivated, they don't want to be in the space with you, you have to find creative ways to engage with them. Again, some cool questions can work. You know what works really well? Music. So what music do you listen to? Everybody listens to music. And more often than usual, I've had them share their playlists with me in Discovery Call. Oh yeah, I listen to this artist. Oh, I haven't heard of them because I genuinely haven't. Do you have it on your phone? Can I listen to something? And when you give them that space to share, that's where you're developing rapport and connection, right? So as a coach, don't tell them what to do. Ask them curious questions so they have the opportunity to tell you what they want to tell you. That's why CC5 is so important here. Okay, open-mindedness, this is obvious, receptive and willing to explore a variety of solutions in the coaching relationship. This enables a collaborative mindset. So let's go back to the example of music. Oh, so you listen to this artist. When do you listen to the music the most? And what does this bring for you? How do you feel after you've listened to the music? Those are coaching questions. They're not closed. They're not giving the client you're not leading the client. Why is music important for you? What makes this so important in your day-to-day? Those are the type of questions that you're trying to do when you're being open-minded as a coach. Yeah. If you don't understand something and you're going to judge them, that's going to show straight through. Out of all the coaching clients I've had, I can tell you one thing. The younger clients can literally read through you if you're judging them. They're very intuitive, the young clients. So if you enter that space, you're no longer coaching. You're probably teaching or instructing or tutoring. And that's all fine, but they haven't paid you money to tutor them. Their parents or their sponsors have paid you money to be a coach to them. Okay. And of course, finally, collaboration. So as I was saying to you earlier, young people rarely get coached in a vacuum. It's always going to be a systemic involvement, whether it's from parents, family, or outside agencies. Even teachers can be outside agencies. But the agent is always the client. So if I ask the client to do some exercise, or they want to do a step in the next week before the next session, and that involves one of their parents or one of their siblings, that's when the involvement of the outside party, does come in. But if it doesn't come in there, then there's no need to bring those parties in unless they talk about them. I'm currently coaching a young boy who recognized in his discovery call that actually I have a really good relationship with my friends, that they really matter to me, so much so that he could name on his fingers, and this is a tool that I can bring in later, how important each person was. And they were all friends. So I said, I noticed that all your important people, are your friends. And what is this telling you about yourself? And it made him think that, oh, I really rely on friendships, and that's a core value that I've noticed about myself. And so this was one of his strengths that he picked up. So I said, so what does that say about you? And he goes, that I guess I'm a really good friend to them too, which is why I've got so many friends. And of course, that's wonderful. That's a breakthrough for this client, because he came in with this whole idea of, I'm not sure about how I'm feeling at school. But essentially, he recognized through this little exercise that he's actually a good friend because I made that observation as a coach. I didn't have to tell him that. I just asked him a question and it made him think. So collaboration is really important. And again, this covers CC3, which is co-creation. I asked him the question, he came up with the answer, and then he had the insight. Okay. This is this is basically the foundation of a coaching relationship, with a young person. If you have all these four points set in your mind, again, put them as a post-it if you want on your computer. I do everything. I don't have this, I don't know this by heart, but it just helps me to remain focused and remind myself that I'm a coach, I'm not anything else. And my discovery call is also based on me giving them a mini coaching session so that they decide to continue working, with me. So that's the end of my presentation. And, I know that the work will now begin to get exciting. I want to hear the questions that we've got. And I also want to hear any scenarios that you may have had with a client where you've got a doubt on whether your discovery call went the way it should have gone, or, I've been through so many disastrous discovery calls over time, which is why I find it the premise of the foundation of my coaching process. Hence, I decided to give this masterclass, because you live and learn, and there's always this part of me trying to dissect what could I have done better in my discovery call. So I think now it's about us kind of having that conversation, all of us here who have probably got really exciting, experiences to share. And I'm going to stop sharing because I think it's important that we start to share with each other now.
Thank you so much, Goldie. This was an awesome session. There were a lot of subtle things that came up in the session, and basically who's the client, and sometimes you try, coaching the client. Who's the client? Basically the parent or the child. And sometimes I have done this mistake myself, and I'm coaching the parent, right? I indirectly start talking about the child, but you're supposed to talk to the parent and talk to the who of the parent and not the who of the child. So certain things came up really well, and the mapping was amazing. Thank you so much for all the work that you did. I would like to personally get a hang. I would like to have the PDF, to go through it maybe later or something. Coming back to the questions now, there are some few questions that people have asked. Lux is asking a question: what's the unethical part that you were touching upon with having discovery session with the client? Didn't get that part.
So the unethical part in the discovery call would be to make some false promises, for example, to a parent who's having an introduction call with you and saying, I want you to make sure that my child, I don't know, they might say something like, I want them to be more open and communicative at home. They don't speak enough. If you're going to tell the parent, yes, of course, I'm going to make sure that we get to that goal, that's being unethical, because that's not the goal. The agent is the client. The client has to tell you the goal. You can't jump the gun and tell the parent, yeah, what you can do is, this is a very interesting point you make. What makes it important for you to touch this as a goal for your child? Okay,
Yeah,
so you have to be a coach, whether you're with the sponsor or with the client. You cannot coach the client in the absence of the client.
right. Yeah. So I kind of missed that part, and I was wondering that what's unethical in the discovery thing. So a couple of things that came for me is Goldie, the type one and type two that you touched upon, right? Typically in my sessions, type one is what I do, and have the parent along, and kids also feel very comfortable, and parent also feel very comfortable, and even in the sessions they want to be around, taking a back seat. They don't participate in the session, right? So that is completely fine, but I say what coaching is all about, and who gets coached, so they don't come and intervene in the process, but they being around, it also gives them a picture of what is going on, and at the end I provide the summary feedback, so that helps them also to reflect back on some of the things that has come out, what a few vocabularies that they could change at their end, some suggestions, right? So we don't really say, it's only an observation. We don't even say this is what you have to do, right? Not recommendation per se, but kind of these are the observations that came out during the sessions, right? That's what I do. Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
what I understood is you have the parents in all the sessions or just the discovery call?
All the sessions, all the sessions.
Oh, okay. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if the ICF calls, I don't know if ICF doesn't call that as an ethical thing, right? But I'm not into ICF credentialing yet, though I'm an
Mhm.
ICF trained and they follow all the,
Sure.
right? Yeah, but it has worked so beautifully for me so far. And at least no client have said so far that, no, I don't want uh, my parent to be around, because I asked this question: is it okay? This is how the setup is. This is how we'll be going through it. How does it? Are you comfortable? Right? Say no. I want my parent to be around. Right? Let them be there. I don't have any secrets, so let them be around. Right?
Yeah.
So that's said. Yeah.
Well, it says a lot about the parents as well. They're taking ownership of the process in the role that they play. That's what I'm picking up from your narrative. And
Right.
as you said, if it's working, wonderful. As long as you're very clear on who is who in this.
Yeah.
That,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So the next question Roshni has at what age can a client legally approach the coach directly without a sponsor?
So it would be 18 as long as they can pay for the sessions, even if it means that the parent is giving them the money and they want to find their own coach, that's completely okay. Legally, it's 18. My own child, my own son is 19, and he did ask to get a coach when he was 18, and I gave him a few people that I thought would be good for him. And then he went and did the filtering on his own. He had his own discovery calls. Uh, what he told me was it's going to cost this much, and I footed the bill, but I was never involved because by then I knew what he was getting himself into. Obviously, having a mum as a coach, he knew what this meant. So yeah, I was not involved. Versus my daughter, who is 16, and she got coached when she was first 14. Obviously, I was involved, just like another parent as a sponsor, and I followed the process that I mentioned. I did type 1 with her and her coach at the time, and after that she was flying on her own. But yes, I was involved in the agreement, in the signing, and then we had a 3-party towards the end when she finished her process.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Roshni?
Yeah, I just wanted to take it a bit more further. So when you talk about the uh, 3-party approach, um, what are some things that are like pointers you keep in mind? This is very important to mention, like because there is a client and a sponsor, and sometimes the agenda can be very different, or the client is probably agreeing in front of the parent. Let's say that I'm okay with this, but how do you get, like, are there some pointers as a coach that you keep in mind when you're going through that approach?
Absolutely. You're right. The client generally agrees in front of the parent, not because they want to disagree, they find it rude to disagree, because they haven't been coached yet, you see. So they trust. In this case, it's all about trust, isn't it? I trust my parent recognizes that I need to work on this. So I'm giving my approval that this will be my goal. However, I put the caveat in the same 3-party and I say, we are agreeing on this goal, but when I have my individual, because remember that's 10 minutes plus 20, right? If both the parties are there. How about parents, you guys can log off now and I'll continue and end my remaining 20 with my client. And if the goal remains the same, obviously we will work on this goal, but it could be that the client has an insight during the session and may want to modify the goal. or may have another goal, and this one might be parked for another time. I do give them that heads up because, of course, my experience tells me. And, you as a coach are observing the body language of the client. So if the client is just sitting there quietly and saying yes, yes, nodding, you know that they're being respectful, they're not breaking. It's cultural as well. If you have like a set of Indian kids, they're more than likely not to disrupt the session. Here in Europe, I have often found, the kids, they may speak up and say, oh no, but I wanted to discuss something else. And that's great too, because remember, you have to have in your head, the agent is the client. And that is something that in the discovery call, you have to keep coming back. You have to also remember the time you're giving in equal proportion for speaking for each party in the three-party. You don't just weigh it on the sponsor just because they're the adult. You can say, oh, so we've heard what you have to say. I would love to hear what, my client would like to say on this. Are you learning something from what mom and dad are saying about you? Again, coaching mindset. Or why do you think this makes it important for mom and dad for you to work on? Would you have anything else to add on this if you can't disagree? So again, you're giving them the opportunity, right, to say, yeah, I want to do this goal, but I'm telling you as your coach, is there something else you would like to add on this? And why is it important for you? I observed, or you can make an observation in the three-party. I've noticed you've not really expressed much emotion whilst this goal is being discussed. Are you thinking about something else? Can you tell me, what your nodding is expressing? I'm curious to know what you're thinking.
So just to ask you, have you had any experience where the parents haven't taken that question very well when you are asking the client?
About what?
So let's say they had no idea in this discovery call is when they're kind of discovering what coaching is all about. And then they had an agenda in their mind as sponsors. And when you ask as a coach to your client, that is there something you want to add to this, or is this something different on your mind? Have you ever received kind of a different kind of a reaction from the sponsors?
Yeah, of course. But that's also a moment for you to be a coach and, say to your sponsor, I'm observing that this is coming to you as a surprise. Would you like to share what impact this insight is having on you? And that's a great moment for both parties to be like, oh, we have an elephant in the room, let's talk about it.
Yeah. Shall I move to the next question, Roshni?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so Sampada is asking, how was discovery call different from chemistry session?
Chemistry session.
Yes.
What's a chemistry session? Sorry.
Okay.
It's the same.
It's
It's the same.
It's the same thing actually. So
Oh,
we can also say that it's a chemistry call, and we
Chemistry is
sometimes
kind
say
of
that it's a
saying how do
discovery
you
call.
gel with your
Oh, okay.
client?
So, okay. I'd never heard of that term. Sorry. So if it's the same, I guess it's the same. The only thing is, I guess in a chemistry session, what I'm getting is you want to see if this is a good fit because of the chemistry element.
That's right. Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah. So in a discovery call, if you remember in one of my slides, one of the objectives is, are we a good fit? Which comes from rapport, trust building, and you can't always hit the nail whether you are a good fit, because you can only do so much in half an hour, right, with your client. But if they are willing to sign up for a pack of, say, 4 sessions, which is what I normally suggest, then you can always tell the parent, if you're noticing that this is really not working, okay, well, how about we park aside these sessions for now? They're not gonna expire, because my sessions never expire. I can give you an option to leave the coaching for another date, so we can postpone the agreement and restart later. This rarely happens, but sometimes it has. Or I'm happy to transfer these sessions for one of the parents. That's just a beautiful way to say, I don't think he needs coaching. I think you might want to get a session. So you give them the
That's
open option.
interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I've done that maybe 2 or 3 times. Normally, you can tell by the end of the first discovery call if this kid is gonna, participate and be involved. But sometimes they don't, and you really have to kind of you have to do the dance differently so that you as a coach are also still coaching, even if it's another client. Yeah.
Yeah, so to further add on that, Goldie, whatever you said now, sometimes
Yeah.
uh, I feel that not necessarily in the first session we get to see completely the opening up, and
Mm.
the first discovery might be little reserved. They
Yeah.
might, yeah, and then after 1 or 2 sessions, that's when they really start opening up things nicely.
Absolutely, absolutely. And this is so true. This says a lot about your faith in yourself as well, because you know that it's going to be determined on how you're able to show up with a coaching mindset. You're able to make them feel comfortable. You're able to develop trust and rapport. This is even with a normal client, you can't do that in just half an hour.
Right.
The beautiful thing with a youth is that you have so many different creative ways to do so because they're looking up to you anyway. So in a way, that leverage that you have where they see you here and and they're here, you can play with that, but from a respectful perspective for them to sort of say, oh, I really like my coach because she's understanding me. But you're not playing the card of I'm your tutor or teacher and I'm going to be like telling you what to do.
Yeah,
You
not
have
quite.
really inspiring teachers as well, right? Who make you feel wonderful and you want to keep talking to them and spending time with them. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's the one thing that at least I keep hearing from every student that comes in says, "Oh, this I like this session because here I get to talk." Where in other sessions they make us listen and say, "Do what I say." Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Very true.
Okay. So Pooja has a question. With young child, is it preferable to do coaching conversation with them or coaching with parent only to enable them to achieve their parenting goal? As we see, young child is more or less modeling and learning from the environment and people in home, school, etc.
So that depends on your agreement and coaching the first intro call. And if you're having the call with the parent in for 10 minutes and they are coming to you and saying, I'd like you to coach my young child, this is perfectly doable. But again, you have to make very clear to the parent that my client is your child, but I'm not going to parent them on your behalf. But if you are unsure about how you want to handle certain situations with your child, then I can coach you and you would be my client. If you're making that observation and there's that little conflict that's coming up in the intro call, you are free to make that observation as a coach. But no, I would not coach the parent on how to deal with their child because I need to see who my client is. I need to see who's got the underlying motive of wanting to grow. In coaching, it's about the client. It's not about I'm going to help you to work with somebody else. It's about why do you want to work with somebody else and why do you want to be this parent that you're talking about being for your child. So that is a separate process. I don't know if that answers your question, Pooja.
Pooja, are you there? Okay.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, Goldie. Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay.
So I have one question. I'm just curious to know. Has it ever happened that you have the parent and the child in the session, and they go through any arguments in the session, during the session, and how do you handle that?
Yeah, yeah. So we call this creating an alliance. If I'm noticing some conflict, then as a coach, it's my responsibility to call them out on the high emotion, on the tone, and say, I think it may be a good idea that we create a coaching alliance. What does this mean? This basically means you, as the two parties that are involved in this three-party session with me, get to choose a rule that you want to put in the alliance to create like a pact of on how you want the session to smooth run. For example, the parent will normally put the first rule and say, I promise to speak with respect and not raise my voice in the session. So that you have to write that down, like on the whiteboard or whatever. If you're doing it virtually, you can put it on the whiteboard. The client gets to go next. Okay, what would you like to, I would like to make sure that I don't feel judged in the session. Judge meaning maybe the parent has like blamed them on something, or has said, but you always do this. That always and never, that distinction. So those are the alliances you create. And then based on that, me as a coach has to monitor what is being done. If I notice that one of them is raising, I'll be like, hands up. And you actually have to say, this is my indicator for you to stop speaking and I need to say something. It doesn't happen, hardly it ever happens, because people who want to come get coached, the parent normally has a sense of responsibility on them to make sure that they are providing the decorum of the session. And but yeah, I mean, it can happen even in companies, right, where you're managing conflict. And that I've done that too, and we have to create an alliance from the get-go if there is conflict management.
Yeah,
Roshni, you have
Rosh. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very interesting what you said just now. I'm also thinking about how it would play in the Indian context. Culturally, it's quite different, right? Like it might not be that uncommon for a parent to lose decorum, even if the intention is there. Um, I wanted to ask you, so when you mentioned during the session about confidentiality, um, how do you put it across in a discovery call? You mentioned you do not try to burden the client with those kind of information in the session. How do you put it across? Like there are instances where um, we have to inform the sponsor if it is something that would harm the child in
Yeah.
some. How
So
does the client know about this? Like, and are they comfortable then sharing? Those are my
yeah,
two.
right. Yeah. So if I notice, and this again, a real example, a client of like 16, I think she said, yeah, so occasionally I smoke weed. It relaxes me with my friends. And of course, she was being very vulnerable and very open and very, she was developing rapport with me, which was obviously a breakthrough moment for me in the session. But for me as a coach, this was a moment where I had to very assertively say to my client, are your parents aware that you smoke weed? And she said, no, because I don't want them to know. So at that moment, I said to my client, what is making you not want to share this with your mom? And she said, well, I'm scared that she won't, like she'll get mad with me, So I said, is that a relationship that you feel is sustainable for the long run for you with your mom? And she said, no, but I can't do it right now. I said, well, and I took the agreement out, which I had made her sign. but she'd forgotten, you see, but she had signed it. But at that moment, it was a very natural moment. I said, look, darling, you have signed this, and therefore this makes me responsible to share this piece of information with your mum. Now, I have wondered whether you want to work on that. It seems to be something that's coming up for you, your relationship with your mum. And she said, well, I don't know what to do. And I said, I can tell you what I need to do, but do you want to do you want to reflect on this? And it was coming to the end of the session. And I told her, if by next session you have something to say to me, then that's great. But otherwise, I hope you understand that I will need to inform mum about this. And she came back the next session and she said, I told mama. And I said, okay. So you don't tell them straight on, I have to tell your mum now. Give them the space to reflect. What's making you feel so scared to tell mum? Let's talk about that. And then she was like, well, this, that, and she got a bit, I was like, it's okay. I won't tell her yet, but I'm going to give you the time to think about it. And it's okay. It's just one session away, right? Of course, I was obviously ready for her to say, I'm sorry, I can't tell my mom. And that would have meant I would have to communicate to her mom. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. Sorry, it was about confidentiality and yeah.
Yeah, that example actually does bring the picture more clearly. Just to add to that question a bit, so when we do the discovery call itself, you said the agreement did say and she signed it, but do we explicitly say it in the discovery call?
Yeah. I
Even
say
to the client, like I know
even to the
the
client,
sponsor.
yeah, exactly. If I'm noticing that there's any indication of there being a conflict with coaching and mental health, or if there are any addictions that might come up in conversation, then this becomes a situation which needs to be diverted to another professional. And as a coach, I have to take ownership of that. So, but see, all these things, because you're saying them from the very beginning, it prevents these situations from happening most of the time. This particular thing was probably just not even in the radar of the 16-year-old at the time in her discovery session, because like she said, I do it sometimes to relax, to get to feel relaxed, But for me, that's still a red flag, because I know something the mother doesn't know that is obviously important. It kind of goes beyond the trust of coach-client relationship, because I have a sponsor to answer to at the end of the day, right? Yeah. We have Lax, who wants to ask. Hand is raised.
I think, yeah.
But further on that, hypothetical, right? So, because you are coaching only the client and parent is not involved, they were hesitant and they've expressed that due to fear of expression, they've not expressed it. And the next session they have come in, got motivated and said, yes, I have told. Because hypothetically, right? What if they are just telling it to you, but not actually informed the parent?
Well, I verified with the mom.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because kids in that moment it
Yeah. No, I verified because that was part of our agreement in the previous session.
yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we are gone past 7:30, so I think this is the last question that we'll be taking up.
Sure.
Because it's a lovely topic and we have so many questions to ask you, Goldie, but unfortunately we have a time limit. So this is the last question. This is by Sheila. Having clarified confidentiality boundaries in discovery call, if a teen talks about infatuation during a coaching session where the initial goal is academic excellence, then
So the teen talks about what? Sorry, infatuation, did you say?
Yes.
Yes.
In what context, infatuation?
I mean, a liking for someone.
Uh-huh.
It's like a liking for someone, but as we say that something which is harmful or which is harmful to them or to others, but it is something which is not that harmful and which is their own sweet secret. And if they
Yeah.
are trying to come up with that, in that case, I mean, because your example was marvelous, where you said that it was consuming, that weed and all. So
Yeah.
that might lead to something. But here, if such situation, erupts, then what? How the coach handles it?
Oh, it's got to be what they bring to the session. If it's about liking somebody, if they have a crush on a guy or a girl or same sex, that's not, I'm not, I would be judging my client there. There's nothing wrong with addressing whatever they bring to the table. If the goal has been set on an academic thing and it leads them into talking about this, perhaps there's a reason why they're not reaching their academic objectives, because this is occupying their emotional space. So as a coach, you need to explore that. And that's what we call life coaching, right? For grown-ups.
Okay, so it means like how this can be. I mean, we can talk to them like focusing on this, how it might be affecting your goal that you had set for yourself. Maybe because
You can
that's not
clarify.
something.
Yeah, of course. You can say, so what a good way of putting it would be, I noticed that we started off exploring the goal of academic progress and excellence. Today you brought forward a new topic, which is this. What's changed? What's changed? And then you give them the space to say what they want to say. Or does this have a connection to your initial goal? Always
Yeah.
open questions, because
Or it might, is it, do you think, or what do you think about, like, it might divert your energy or focus towards your main goal? Maybe a question framed in that way so that they can reflect that this something.
That's a closed question.
No. Yeah. So I mean, if they are talking of something which a coach might feel that is a thing that is distracting the client.
You can't
from the
think
main
that,
goal.
though. They have to tell you. As a coach,
Right?
you have to be open and curious to whatever they are bringing. So if it is a complete like 180 from what they first started, explore the how did that happen? Not is that taking away your energy from your first goal, because that's a closed question. In fact, it might be giving them more energy to perform better at school because they suddenly have somebody they like.
Okay, so Goldie, here is one more thing which I was trying to ask you. When we talk about like, because this is a question which I got from someone, and I was just putting it here because we talked about this kind of a secret. But when we are coaching a teenager, um, we talk about like talking more of who than what. So when we
Yeah.
are coaching these people, young people, even when you're talking about 11, 12, 13, 14. So the percentage of what and who, because if we if we focus on who of more of that, then that might not get the results that they want. I mean, when they sit together in the discovery call and the goal that is being set there. So the percentage of what versus who, how it should be there when coaching young, the teens, preteens, or the teens.
It's the same, that it's always the person, even if they are talking about an academic goal, or in this case, a relationship that could be brewing. It's what impact does this goal have on you?
All right.
It's always, it always comes back to you, the client. What does it make it important for you to talk about your crush? Why do you think, or not the why? The why is a close. What are you learning about yourself as you talk to me about this crush of yours? You see, the
Yes.
questioning is always the same.
Always same.
Always
Yes.
the same. Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
I hope that
Yeah.
helps, Sheila.
Yeah. Perfect. Because this was something which I did not, go through, but
Yeah.
it is something because we were talking in a group and we were just discussing this thing that this has come up with someone else. So I was just because when you talked about that girl's case, then I thought of asking this to you.
I just finished coaching a client. Let me share this because I think it's relevant. This gentleman is studying for some very, very important exams coming up in December. And in the same process that I've had with this young man for almost 6 months now, there was a moment this person was distracted because he noticed it by a girl who he really likes. But the problem was that there was a communication conflict between them because he was focused on his exams preparation. But he also felt it was important to maintain this relationship alive. And we had to divert for some time because he learned so much about his communication skills. Because real life is that, no, we are always working towards something big, but you have a wife, you have a husband, you have a friend, you have a sister. And so they are also navigating those relationships. And maybe tomorrow that girl will mean nothing in the bigger picture. But in this particular moment in his life, she meant everything to him.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Goldie. Thank you very much.
Thank you to everyone else who's asked and participated today.
Thank you so much, Goldie. There's a lot of appreciation for you for your sessions. I mean, yeah, and people are thanking you for the beautiful session we had. Um, do we go ahead with the fist of five, do you think? Because it's already 5:55, or we can just do it next time.
I would love to go through it, but I myself, I'm on a time crunch because I have to go to school
Yes,
to fetch my daughter.
yes.
It's
So let's end the session here. I think thank you so much, Goldie, for the wonderful session. I loved how carefully you choose the words while talking to the client, and that's really important. And at the same time, maintaining the autonomy, right? I mean, that's something to learn from, and always focusing on the who of the client. So thank you so much for the session, Goldie, and looking forward to more master classes with you. And thank you
Thank
so much,
you.
everyone who's come for the session. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone. It was so nice to speak
Yeah,
to all of you.
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Goldie. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.